Hi, I'm Tom Richardson, BookNet Canada's Bibliographic Manager and General Standards Person, Onyx Guru. This is TechForum 2022's Standards and Certification presentation. This year a standards overview as usual, but with a focus on metadata basics. As always, our land acknowledgement is appropriate. BookNet Canada acknowledges that its staff, board, and partners work upon the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, as well as Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and Indigenous peoples. These are the original nations of this land. We endorse the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and support an ongoing shift from gatekeeping to space-making in the book industry. Just in terms of this presentation is I'll acknowledge when I change slides. Generally speaking, each slide is text. The transcript and the slides will be similar, but there will obviously be a little more in the transcript. And only one slide is going to require a bit of description. So that will just come up at one point, that I'll just be describing a bit of stuff within the slide. Hopefully that's all reasonable, and let's begin. Participate with standards. We want you to. We want you to contact us with an idea or a problem, participate in one of our products, user groups, and BookNet products always strive for compliance with standards. And you can do this by joining a committee at BookNet or with other publishing organizations. BookNet Canada is a not-for-profit that develops technology, standards, and education to support the Canadian book publishing supply chain, which would include booksellers, publishers, libraries, distributors, wholesalers, media, sales and literary agents, associations, government agencies, who knows? The list goes on. Our staff work with other Canadian companies to solve supply chain problems using standards. We ensure Canadian compatibility with US and international standards, and always with a goal to efficiency coming through standards. Next slide. Standards that BNC is involved in. So on the left you'll see a list of standards that we're closely involved with, and on the right you'll see a list of organizations we're particularly closely involved with. So the standards, well, first and foremost, and often forgotten, is EDI, the Electronic Document Interchange, I think. That is the backbone of the industry and has been for the past 20 or 30 years. Still important. We're still involved. Subject schemes, BISAC and THEMA, are a particular focus for us. Identifiers, ISBN, GTINs, ISNIs. Other standards, ISO, W3C, GDSN, SAN, the last two being address identifiers. If any of these alphabet soups are causing you problems or you're unsure, it's a good reason to get in touch. We're available for things, and my email will be at the end. Organizations, BISG, the Book Industry Study Group in the US, we're closely involved, and we have members sitting on the Metadata Committee, Subjects, Supply Chain. We monitor quite closely the Workflow Committee, and I don't believe identifiers is really an identified group working now, but if it were, we'd be involved. Editor, that is the international organization that comes out of the UK, responsible for organizing Onyx and THEMA, as well as a number of other things. We're closely involved in their steering committee, and we usually will have people sitting on any committees doing work as well. And we're closely involved with our sister organization, the BTLF in Quebec, who are the French language equivalent to BookNet Canada, who are the English language equivalent. Next slide. And the standing group that is responsible for our committee, our standards, is our Bibliographic Committee, representing the Canadian English Language Group, national group for Onyx or for THEMA. That sort of just includes a quick standards overview of what we're involved in. So let's get into the next slide and metadata basics. good place to begin there would be to define metadata, so next slide. So what is metadata? It's the information you need to run your business. Now, I would argue that is the entire definition of metadata. It's what you track internally. But there is a particularly important component that we actually focus more on, which is the next two things, which would be the information your trading partners need from you so that they can provide or support services that you need. And it's also the information an end user needs to know to decide to buy or read or whatever books. Next slide. And the important point that I'm trying to make here is that metadata internal to a company can come from external sources. It would be from their trading partners, from services like BNC sales and library data. It can come from documentation like the BISG BNC best practices for North American metadata, or from BISAC subjects, or editors' Onyx or Thema specifications, or their best practice guide. Metadata can come from a lot of different sources, and they all become internal to your needs if they are important to your business. Slide. And the point there is that metadata is a feedback loop. Your needs inform other companies. Their needs inform you. Editor, BNC, BISG, BTLF organize and publish code lists and best practices to help you trade it. And in doing so, provide stable definitions for metadata when traded. Your metadata, what you record, and however you record it is what your business needs to know to thrive, what you tell others to enable both you and them to thrive. Slide. So workflow efficiency is a concept often associated particularly with digital book production, but it has a broader meaning, I think, that includes metadata. So while a database may seem to be the natural place for metadata, the most important thing is being able to find it quickly and accurately. You want to avoid finding out that the correct book title is only recorded on the freelance designer's off-site computer. You need to plan so that them that know update metadata and leave it in the place it should be found in. Slide. Metadata is traded. There are a lot of stakeholders who need it. So there's a series of slides where I'm using three separate sorts of things. Internal, external, end users are kind of the general themes for them. So I'm trying to emphasize that it is as much internal as anything else and who needs it. So metadata is traded, and what sorts of stakeholders need it? Well, production and editorial need to know what's done and needs doing. Retailers, wholesalers, and distributors all need information both in advance and ongoing about your books. End buyers need to know what they are buying, to have a reason to buy the book. Slide. Metadata should be updated. Stakeholders depend on accuracy for their systems. Production and editorial need to meet each other's deadlines. Shipments and files need to arrive when they are expected. Retailers and end users need to know, well, when a book will be available, if it's not available, when it will be next available, and it's just not available at all. Books have a life cycle that needs to be tracked. Dates need to be accurate and updated when changed. New slide, and it's metadata should be both unique and match the book. Badly done metadata can defeat its purpose. Now, this slide is set up to mimic things like a data entry screen and a bookseller's display. So graphically, I'm implying the book entry screens by saying title, Bob, in brackets, Jane series. Subtitle, a novel. Series name, Jane series. series number 2. Now, if a retailer is given a book title that embeds the series, as this example would be, your metadata embeds the series and the book title, who's responsible for fixing poor and repetitious online display, which is illustrated on the bottom left with my mock-up of a book cover, the book title being clearly Bob, a novel clearly being the subtitle, and Jane Series 2 appearing, well, as you would expect a series thing if it was to appear in the book cover, and it probably would. And beside it is what the display would look like, which is in bold main title things, Bob, Jane Series, subtitle a novel, Jane Series 2, the series. It's stupid looking, frankly, and that is often how books are displayed, stupidly. Now, I also offer a bonus question, just to show, defeating purposes. If you don't send the series as a unique piece of metadata, how do you expect a retailer to create a series listing so that they can cross-sell the series? If you want Jane Series 1 and Jane Series 3 to appear, say, on the same page as Bob, Jane Series 2, you're going to have to give some information to the retailers so they can accomplish that. Next slide. Now, metadata granularity is another concept, and it's basically that each stakeholder needs much the same information, but not always the same way. And it's important that the metadata you aggregate about your business and its products is granular enough, tracked in small enough components so that it can be reassembled to meet all use cases. Now, granular metadata allows you to meet all the competing needs. But the trick is, it shouldn't be so finely ground that it costs you more than it's worth. Slide. Now, ONIX can help. I'm not talking about ONIX in the basics, but I do want to reference it a little bit. So, granularity gives you context on how to best use ONIX. Because whether or not you directly use it, or base your publishing system in part on it, ONIX is a metadata system created for trading book information, book publishing information, its metadata, accurately. It's organized by editor, a UK-based not-for-profit who are experts at creating just enough granularity to support book metadata exchange. That's the exchange, not what your systems need, but the exchange of metadata about books. Now, its code lists are a lingua franca, a common language. Now, you don't need to use the codes in your systems, but your systems should be compatible with their definitions so that when you export your metadata, it means something in the common system. Next slide. Just don't forget, ONIX isn't designed to support other business needs like grant applications, tax preparation, mail merge function, and that there's more to publishing metadata, what your business needs to know, than book metadata. Next slide. Now, at some point, computers have to talk to computers, and they need to trade the metadata. The best metadata system allows for its transfer directly from your systems into a stakeholder system. That allows your actionable knowledge to maximize everyone's potential to act for your books. For two computers to talk, an agreed-on identifier is needed. Slide. And that would be the International Standard Book Number. There is only one fully realized publishing identifier, the ISBN, needed for EDI, and every other book-related sale or potential sale. A 13-digit number that's a subset of the GTIN 13 used by all businesses. An ISBN represents a saleable book product, a single physical binding, a single file type. When you're using an ISBN, there should be no ambiguity about the specific product being referenced. Next slide. Now, I'm really sad that I need this slide still, but I do. ISBN 10 should not be used. 979 ISBN 13s have no ISBN 10 equivalent. If you need more information on that, please contact me. Every Canadian distributor has active 979 ISBNs in their dataset. They are now in use, even if you don't use any. So, if you have any active reports based on or mixed with ISBN 10, it is critical that you update them to ISBN 13. Using 978 ISBN 13s paired with an ISBN 10 in metadata is actually discouraged at this point. But I have to say, it does no harm if trading partners request it. Why does this slide still exist? It's because we know that trading partners do request it sometimes, and they should stop so we don't have to, and this slide does not have to exist anymore. We'll move on to the next one. Another great one, still needs to be said sometimes. eISBNs do not exist. Only ISBNs exist. There are no special rules that apply to digital products, but ISBN guidelines do provide for both digital and physical products, and there is a URL provided here that will take you to some guidelines for assignment of ebooks. The salient points are summarized here. Each digital file format made available by a publisher should be assigned its own ISBN. The question is, how can anyone order it from you, the publisher, if it's not uniquely identified? However, a publisher is not responsible for assigning different ISBNs if retail partners offer different file formats. That is, they convert the publisher's file format to some other type. Hopefully with your permission, but not relevant here. Or if they limit the file's functionality by using DRM, that they add digital rights management to your file. So you don't need to assign ISBNs because of that. Now, the publisher can assign ISBNs for that use if it benefits their system. But their external responsibility are to identify what they can supply as files to others. It's an ordering function. So it's actually the same as physical books. You're just tracking ordering needs. Enough said. Next slide. So what is the least you can do? Every publishing business should be able to provide a list of ISBN 13s for all the products they can sell, both digital and print together. And I would say the same for a publisher association who's trying to track their membership. They too should be able to provide a list of ISBN 13s for all the products their members can sell. But that's getting really advanced. This is the one thing, the most basic ability to do metadata that I'd like you to take from this webinar. And it's not actually a very small thing, and it's actually harder than it sounds, but it is the very first necessary step. Slide. So to summarize metadata basics, metadata should be available at the right time. Metadata should be sent to the right places. It should be in sufficient detail to support the needs of stakeholders that support your business, and your own, of course. It needs to carry an identifier so that it can be rapidly loadable to databases without human intervention, and that should be a goal. ISBN 13 is your only current option as an identifier, so treat it with all due respect. Be able to provide a full list of active products by ISBN 13 on demand. Next slide. That concludes the basics portion. I'd like to follow it with a standards overview, sundry things of interest, it's actually quite similar to the one I gave last year, because not that much has changed in the past year in standards, but there's always a few things to point out. The first slide is a real mouthful to say. There's a publication entitled E-Book Bibliographic Metadata Requirements in the Sale, Publication, Discovery, Delivery, and Preservation Supply Chain. Now, it is a publication of NISO, which is the National Information Standards Organization, which is a US-based equivalent to our CSA, Canadian Standards Association, a non-profit membership organization that identifies, develops, maintains, and publishes technical standards to manage information. All of which is to say, they have published a really excellent best practice guide for digital books, and we highly recommend it and provide a URL for you to obtain it from. Next slide. The other news was announced last year, but it's still coming. There is a revision plan for the BISG BNC Best Practices for North American Metadata. I'll even be providing a link to it in the later. But this is the thing that was last revised in 2015, but it remains the one document that clearly lays out the 35 things that, at a minimum, need support in North American metadata. Each chapter is supported by a clear business case and needs statement. BISG, with support from BNC, is planning to update this important document in 2022. And this is a very good time to ask questions of, well, what should I expect from others to support from my metadata? What do I owe others as metadata? What's important today? And if you have strong opinions on that, you should get in touch with me. Email at the end. Next slide. ISNI.org, International Standard Name Identifier. People or groups, even companies, responsible for creation of content can carry an international identifier. An ISNI, an International Standard Name Identifier, is a simple way to link creators to the tools that support them in the sale of their products. Other media, music in general, and YouTube in particular, understand it as an asset. It is increasingly used within book publishing, but not nearly as much as we would like to see. But if your company thinks blockchain might have value for your products, you'll want to consider it. Rights sales, and working with literary agents can improve with it. A retailer's author page possibly might reliably represent a single author if it can get implemented. In any case, be aware that between 50 and 70% of Canadian authors already have an ISNI assigned, and most established publishers have one as well. Using them in your metadata for identification of your publisher name or for the specific author is highly recommended. And these are available by simply looking them up at the site above. Next slide. If you want more information on ISNI, there is actually an excellent webinar available on demand. It's from the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, I think, WIPO. Held an introductory webinar on the ISNI standard February 16th, 2022, as part of their also recommended Copyright Infrastructure series. So you can watch the ISNI episode here at the URL provided, and look for and request more information from BookNet Canada. Let us know your plans. Next slide. Onyx 3.0 supports contributor place, a specific composite for recording information about the place and contributor. And it is recommended for promotional support. So contributor place is a repeatable composite supporting 10 codes to associate a place with an aspect of an author's life. The two main codes we want you to be using for promotion are Code 08, Citizen of. A code of CA designates a Canadian author, and it supports our long-standing, industry-wide, and can I say, very successful promotion of Canadian authors through bestseller lists, dedicated websites that offer opportunities for that flag market to appear and wave high. We're also looking at some of the definitions around this and looking for improvements on it, and there may be some changes, but we'll announce that at some point. It'll be clearer, and it may not change. So this is the code to provide the Canadian author marker 08. The other code we would like you to start using, two codes, two purposes. Second code, code 04, currently resides in, is needed to support retailers and libraries' promotion of local authors. So it's quite a simple concept. To work, it needs a country code, a region code for the province or state, and a location, which is free text field for the city name or some regional subdivision that would allow people in that area to recognize, whoa, we have an author currently residing here. And then they would be able to get in touch with you for the possibility of promoting that person. Sweet, simple, easily done. I believe it's supported in Adawise already. I'm not sure about that. Definitely supported in Catalyst. We should be using it. Next slide. We would also recommend contributed place to be used for regional support, because after all, it's all about geography. Now, this isn't specific to that, but Code 00 was added about a year and a half ago. It's a code specifically for the purpose of using legacy Onyx 2.1 data in 3.0. So there actually is a way in 3.0, if you only have your 2.1 data to work from, to assign it a value that can be recognized for what it is. 2.1 level data being supplied in 3.0. In 3.0, used properly, you would use individual codes to provide much more granular information. So the code which I would like to point out, beyond the fact that there are 9 other codes than this one, each with a specific definition, is the code 07 flourished in. And I would just like to highlight it because it's not very usable for regional support because it's overused. And that's likely as it's the least defined code. So people see it as somehow multi-purpose. Like if I'm only going to give one code, it's going to be flourished, which means it means nothing. Granular data means being specific, and using something because it's the least defined is really not a good idea. It is recommended for dead authors where nationality isn't relevant. They flourished here, makes perfect sense then. Or a comparative value where resides or another value doesn't fit, like resides here but flourished somewhere else. So flourished and can be used regionally to great effect. From Newfoundland, but flourished in the Northwest Territories. That might be Farley Mowat. Born in Montreal, but flourished in Paris. Possibly Mavis Gallant. Born in Medicine Hat, but flourished in Hollywood. I know there's somebody out there, 1930s actress, but can't remember the name. Sure, somebody's there. Somebody matches that, though. Flourished. Very useful for regionally. Pointless if it's being used because it's the least defined code. Next slide. As long as we're on regional codes, regional codes are important as subjects. Bookstores and libraries buy regionally. Because guess what? Readers want locally defined books. Where and when can influence identity. Identity is part of diversity, and we care about diversity because diversity sells books, does it not? It does. So Winnipeg's North End, 1930 to 1950, is not the same as the ward in Toronto during the late 19th century. Go figure. Thema's superb qualifier lists support both geography and time. Now, BISAC's regional themes list is more limited, but still important. Now, can I just acknowledge that publishers often cite non-use as a reason for not supplying regional codes. I can only observe that retailers cannot use what they do not have. Accurate regional coding can help sell books. It is wanted, it is being requested, and it should be used. Next slide. A bit of stuff on 3.0, can't really avoid it. It's currently defined by Code List issue 56 with issue 57, well, expected more or less at the end of the month, early April. The current version is 3.0.8, so we're now at the 8th version of Onyx 3.0. Each version represents small shifts in how the data is used. If you have not updated your specification in the past 10 years, you are using 3.0.0's specification, and it's kind of changed since then. Anyway, the most recent change was the addition of Block 8, Production Detail, and that's there to carry assembly instructions for digital packages like ebooks, print on demand, or audiobooks. Now, it's optional and unlikely to be seen in general Onyx feeds. And one important thing to note about it, it's not there to support ordering of the digital products, only the instructions to assemble them. But it has actually generated a lot more interest than expected, as companies do need a better way to trade the Onyx metadata, which gives a full explanation of the metadata around the book, and its production instructions. So it is being seen as useful, and if that sounds like it may help your company, you should have a look. Next slide. Now, Onyx 3.0, just as a general statement, the overall quality of Onyx 3.0 in BiblioShare remains kind of poor and has more 2.1-like structure than good Onyx 3.0 should have. There are some US firms who want to ensure that they're getting better quality 3.0 data by using schema validation to use they receive good 3.0. So if somebody's complaining about your 3.0 and you're unsure why they're asking, come to us. That's what we live for this. If it's based on the standard, we can explain why it's important and what the data should mean. Another thing that you can do is you can send us a test file of 100 records or so to be run against editor's strict schema. So there is the Onyx schema that we'll talk about in a second. But there's also a strict version that gives feedback very similar to BiblioShare's file quality reports for 2.1 or 3.0 on Onyx best practices in 3.0 and looks for major issues. It's a great way to learn about better ways to be creating your 3.0 data. And if you need to, you can ask for a bibliographic review or just request a call to understand more. We're always trying to improve our educational output, and your problems are likely shared by others. Next slide. We would like to suggest that you learn to schema validate and use specifications. Now, in the Onyx 3.0 specifications, in the application note section, validating Onyx 3.0 files, there are four publications depending on how you're counting them. There are specific application notes for a Mac version of talking about Mac software and a separate one for Windows talking about Windows software. That is XML freeware. So we're not talking about how to do schema validation without incurring any costs. There is also a visual application note based on the Mac version, but it's perfectly usable for the PC one as well. And it even has a transcript available. So all the components there are there to be able to learn how to validate Onyx 3.0 files. And if you have any problems doing so, run into hitches, want to talk about what you're looking at because some of the material can be very obscure, very good reason to give a call. Send an email. This and a lot more is available at the link given here. We would also like to recommend that you use the best practice documentation. That's the aforementioned BISG BNC Best Practices for Product Metadata Guide for North American Data Centers and Receivers, last published in 2015, update coming this year. The link provided is, of course, to the current version. And there is also an Onyx for Books implementation and best practice guide. About 300,000 words of detail. It actually interoperates with the specification. Lovely piece of documentation and easier to use than you would think. There are blue boxes that have highlight the most important points, white boxes that highlight the most important problems. I mean, you don't need to read it too deeply, but it has all the information that you need to know to do it properly. Next slide. Quick overview on subjects, just where we are at this point. BISAC subjects, the current version is 2021. The next version, 2022, will be released November, December. It's on a yearly cycle, and there's a link to where you can download the current versions, get the current versions, or use it online, actually. Now, for THEMA, current version is 1.4, but in April, this April, there will be the release of the version 1.5. It's on a every second year cycle. And the, well, where you can pick up the information on THEMA is also provided there. And finally, the BookNet Canada hosts the BISAC to THEMA translator, which is a place where you can submit BISAC codes to find out corresponding THEMA codes using a BISG originated like list. Its current version is BISAC 2020 to THEMA 1.4.2. We expect to have an update to 2021 to THEMA 1.5 sometime in 2022. It has to be updated when the BISG makes the new mapping available. And before you get too excited about it, BISAC as a subject standard is not very verbose. It's very market-driven to, two or three, 3 or 4 codes or less is often all you need to accurately describe a book. THEMA is very verbose, and you assemble multiple subjects and qualifiers and such to create a really rich keyword-like, I would call it, key concept subject and time, geography view of what the book is. So if you're looking for a translation from a limited list to a verbose list, results will vary, and you should just look at the results as a starting point, not as an end point. Good for backlist if you're trying to do a lot of things at once, but don't expect it to be complete and all that you should do. Next slide. Well, what do I do? BISAC or THEMA? It's a perennial question. Catalyst and BiblioShare support both BISAC and THEMA. We ask that publishers support both to provide the best quality. And I would say their systems complement each other. BISAC groups books that sell in North America, providing a focused market overview, that few code type mentality. THEMA provides a structured subject concept system and truly international in the scope and translated into over 20 languages. I think it's something like 25. I should update that number. In North America, both are better with the support of the other. And if the question comes up, well, are retailers using it? Retailer use comes with availability. If you don't use THEMA, that's why it's not being used. So go figure. Indigo has said in its news PIM system that they are currently setting up and taking data in for now will use THEMA. So Amazon, outside of North America, definitely using THEMA. It's used. It's worth it if you care about international sales. Next slide. Another mouthful header. Diversity, equity, inclusion, identity, indigeneity, and justice. For book subjects and author promotion, it is a place for participation. Both BISAC and THEMA are adding values to help buyers find books that include various diversity-related values. Getting it right is hard, as evidenced by the rapid decline in use of own voices after it was found the association led to potentially unsafe and uncomfortable situation for book authors. As much as we want a button that will make it easy to create a timely list of bird books by Black authors, or just to promote well-vetted lists for use during Indigenous or Black History Months, getting it right takes well-thought-out positions and choices. Big problems are solved by participation and sharing of information, we would invite you to do that as much as you can. Next slide. Accessibility metadata is finally happening. Many publishers are now getting certified, which is great, and that's the first step. Before you can create the metadata, you need to have products that you can say something about. And because they are beginning to create ebooks made accessible, they are doing that. But there do seem to be problems associated with the metadata. While these often relate to lack of software support, sometimes it's confusion about the metadata. And this BISG metadata is excellent and comprehensive, looking at it from both sides of the coin. Accessibility and metadata, the critical connection, YouTube thing. Get in touch if you have additional questions. What problems are you having? There is actually a crosswalk available from the EPUB metadata to the ONIX metadata, and that's easily available. It's in the webinar cited here, but I can certainly provide that as well. Next slide. This is the final slide, and it kind of concludes the presentation. Just don't forget that the ONIX for Book acknowledgement format specification exists, because it can support automation of messages from people that you send your metadata to. And Amazon is using it. It can be used to confirm the receipt of the original ONIX message, report to the original sender a summary of product records processed and updated to the recipient's database, report details of errors encountered or any queries about the product supply, or return to the sender details of proprietary identifiers assigned by the recipient. Amazon ASINs, I'm looking at you. It can also be used for two-way communications. And at the very start, in the metadata basics, I had a slide for metadata is a feedback loop. And here we go. This would be a part of it. This concludes the presentation. Next slide. Here's my email address. You'll want to sign up for our newsletter. We have a lot of blog posts about standard stuff, and it just keeps increasing, particularly stuff around subjects. But we announce when ONIX things happen. We announce this, we announce that. We announce lots of things. You really do want to be signed up for some newsletters and looking at our blog posts. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this.